Good afternoon. Welcome to this wonderful event we have planned for the remainder of the afternoon, this dreary day in Cambridge. My name is Guhan Subramanian. I am the faculty chair for the Harvard Law School Program of Negotiation. It's a great privilege to be able to welcome you all here today. As many of you know, PON was founded more than 40 years ago as a research center devoted to improving the theory and practice of negotiation and dispute resolution around the world. Over the course of our 4 decades, the objectives and mission have broadened significantly. We have a scholarly journal. We have a center for curriculum development. We have a convening group for public events such as this one. And we have executive education programs in Cambridge and around the world. It's at that last activity that we first encountered Malala Yousafzai. She signed up for a course at the program of negotiation in the Charles Hotel. She did so with her usual modesty. She simply listed her name and her husband's name, he was joining as well, with no indication of their prominence in the world. And so it was with some surprise when Nicole Bryant, the managing director of PON, called me. And Nicole said, Guhan, I think we've got a Nobel Peace Prize winner in our student group this semester. And Malala and Asif came to Cambridge. They took our course. They were wonderful participants, and we got to know them through that experience. PON has kept in touch with Malala and Asif since then. And when she was coming back to Boston and suggested the idea of a movie that she's recently been the executive producer of, we said, of course, we'd be thrilled and honored to be the host for that event. So what you're about to see is an extraordinarily powerful film. I watched it this weekend with a mix of emotions. It was horror at the actions of the Taliban. It was great admiration for the courageous women you'll see on the screen. This documentary, on which Malala served as executive producer, follows the lives of 3 courageous activists, women activists, who work to further women's freedoms under grave threats to themselves and to those around them. I watched it this weekend, as I said, and it is stunningly brave of those individuals you'll see on the screen. But as you watch it, I would urge you to think not just of them being filmed in a very public way and potentially victims of danger and violence because of it, but also those doing the filming of this extraordinary set of events and harrowing set of events. It's a very courageous film, and it's well worth the time. The film goes about 90 minutes, and then we'll hear from Malala herself, as well as Gaisu Yari, who is here with us now, who is from the Malala Fund. They will talk about the condition of women and girls in Afghanistan and what they are doing to advance the cause of women's freedoms in Afghanistan and around the world. You'll be given the chance to ask questions using the QR codes that are around the room, and you can submit questions at any point starting now and as soon as the movie is over as well. So with that, thank you all for joining us here today for this important conversation. Let's show the movie.
Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I'm John Goldberg, the Dean of the Law School, and it is truly my honor to welcome Malala Yousafzai back to Harvard Law School.
Thank you.
And I'm thrilled to see so many of you here today for this really amazing occasion. I don't need to tell you that Malala is a world-renowned education activist, champion of rights for women and girls, Nobel Peace Prize laureate, UN Messenger of Peace, and a co-founder of the Malala Fund. She also, most importantly, is an alumna of the Program on Negotiation at Harvard Law School,
Yes.
in which she participated in 2023.
Yes.
Malala, our community is so grateful that you have taken this occasion to share your work with us and to participate in what I know will be a deeply meaningful conversation about the human rights issues addressed by the powerful film that our audience has just seen. We are also joined today by Gaisu Yari, an Afghan women's rights advocate and gender justice expert who currently serves as the Advocacy and Policy Manager at the Malala Fund. Welcome, Gaisu.
Thank you very much.
Finally, I would like to thank and acknowledge Afghan students who've come from around Harvard to join us today. Today's conversation will be moderated by Professor Guhan Subramanian, the chair of the program on negotiation at Harvard Law School, and the Joseph H. Flum Professor of Law and Business at Harvard Law School, and the Douglas Weaver Professor of Business Law at Harvard Business School. Before turning things over to him, I just want to thank Nicole Bryant and the entire team at the program on negotiation, as well as the Harvard Dean's Office for organizing this fantastic event. And with that, I will be quiet and turn things over to Guhan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean Goldberg, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. Malala, Gaisu, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you with us. I want to start, if I may, with this extraordinary movie and how you became involved with it. You mentioned some of the things that were challenging, to put it mildly, in how it was produced. Could you give us some of the background on your involvement and the actual mechanics of how this movie came to be?
First of all, it's truly an honor to be here at Harvard. Thank you so much to all of you for watching this documentary, Bread and Roses. I became the executive producer of it. I have been finding ways to help amplify the voices of Afghan women and girls, because when the Taliban took control in 2021, they have been erasing women from public life. They are systemically oppressing them, banning them from education, from work. So I have been finding ways to support Afghan women in every way possible, from supporting Afghan women activists to supporting secret schools to also then amplifying their stories. When I came across this incredible documentary, Bread and Roses, I immediately said yes. These three women who we see in the documentary have risked their lives to raise awareness about the millions of Afghan women and girls. They had worked really hard to earn a place, to have a job, and to make a change in their community. But you can see how all of that was taken away from them as soon as the Taliban took power. A lot of, all of these women have been evacuated. They're all in safe places. But this movie is an opportunity to raise awareness about the lives of other Afghan women and girls who are still under the Taliban rule. As you can see, Afghan women are very brave and resilient and courageous. But this is a call for more support and global solidarity. Afghan women should not be alone in this. One thing which I keep highlighting to people is that the situation has only worsened since this documentary was filmed. I spent a lot of time with the director of this documentary. Her name is Sahra Mani. And one thing she always highlights to people is that if she were to go and film this right now, it would be literally impossible, because the Taliban have brought in more restrictions on women's movement. They're even banning women from protesting. There are terrible stories of women being put in prison and beaten up. So the environment is currently even more challenging. And it's an opportunity for all of us to reflect on how lack of action and attention is only helping the Taliban worsen what they're doing. And right now, it is an institutionalized form of oppression against women and girls simply because they're women and girls. Afghan women activists call it a gender apartheid. And I hope that through stories like Bread and Roses, we can become more aware of it and we can take action.
Okay, so do you want to comment as well, because you were directly involved with some of these activities that are in the movie. Can you just comment on that and the current situation, I think, as well, in terms of what's going on?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Malala. It's a pleasure to be with you speaking on this stage.
And if you may just turn on your microphone, is it on?
I think it's on.
Oh, it is?
Isn't
Okay,
it?
good. Yeah.
Yes, good.
Right.
Perfect.
Great.
Before I think respond to your question, I would like to start by saying that tomorrow is the first day of school in Afghanistan, and it's more than 1,600 days that young girls over the age of 11 cannot attend schools. And therefore, everybody, the doors are open, but the doors for girls are not open in Afghanistan. That is the first one. I think the second one, I would like to recognize the Afghan students here. Films like this is triggering for us, especially as we experienced leaving Afghanistan, escaping the Taliban. I did that myself. And also would like to let you know that my father got kidnapped by the Taliban in 2000, who never came back. I'm also a survivor of child marriage in Afghanistan, and I had to escape, as well as I had to leave Afghanistan the second time because I was not allowed to stay in that country. So having all of those experiences, and I understand for students who actually had the same experience, it's triggering, but I would like to let you know that you're not alone. We are on this together, and I think we are building solidarity around the world. To build on what Malala actually explained, I think what we see inside Afghanistan is meeting the threshold of systematic discriminations against women and girls in Afghanistan. So in the past 5 years, we do see more than 230 decrees coming out. The majority of them are targeting women and girls. It starts from going to school, banned from work, to also targeting your private spaces where your voices are not allowed to be heard by your neighbors. And usually, I always echo on what Malala usually say when she talks about Afghan women, basically saying that the Taliban are trying to make sure that Afghan women and girls are invisible, but we are pushing toward to make sure that they are visible at the international level. But I think one of the other things I would like to point, which is I think for you, if you're a student, is important to notice is that the Taliban are the product of the Cold War as well as the war on terror in Afghanistan. What we do see for women and girls in Afghanistan is the product of the Cold War as well as the war on terror. We have experienced it, and that was brutal for us in Afghanistan, and the Taliban are that product who are coming and taking all the rights that we had away from us. So the way I think we work inside Afghanistan is that we work with, I think we rely so much on the expertise of Afghan women who are leading this work because we don't have an office inside Afghanistan. The way they lead the work is that it starts from underground schools to documentation to also living in exile, pushing for building solidarity and global solidarity, as well as making sure that gender apartheid is recognized as crimes against humanity. And also, I just would like to let you know that I was at the chamber of the 6th Committee at the United Nations in January. As if you're a law student, you probably understand the process. So gender apartheid is not codified under the international law, but I think what the Afghan women have called it in 1996, 2001, as well as now, is that what the Taliban are doing is to erase women in Afghanistan is something that we don't see in the world. Therefore, I think this should be recognized as a crime under the international law to make sure that it doesn't happen anywhere else in the world, right? We know that the codification process is a very long process, it's very technical, but it's also political. So as if you're a law student, you probably understand the process. Usually, these processes require global push and political push, and that's what I think we do at Malala Fund as well as Malala herself, pushing the leaders to take actions instead of just putting statements out and show solidarity with Afghan women and girls.
Can I pick up on that last comment to either one of you? I know that the Malala Fund is working hard to make gender apartheid a crime against humanity. Can you comment on what the fund is doing and maybe more importantly, what we can do to help in that effort?
So I'll just start by saying that right now the conversations that have happened so far, all the way back when the so-called peace talks started with the Taliban, women have been excluded. Afghan women have not been in those rooms. Their demands, their rights have not been on the agenda. And this goes back to the previous administration, even before that, when the US brought the Taliban into these rooms, and there was a democratic government in the country. It doesn't mean like everybody liked that government, but at least it's the autonomy of the Afghan people, who they decide for themselves, who they vote for themselves. But the US and other countries actually gave a whole platform and space to the Taliban, and then started the so-called peace conversations with them. They excluded women's rights from the agenda, and they did not even include the civil society in those rooms. And in the end, they just left the country to the Taliban, gave them all the power, and walked away. Now that the Taliban have been in control for the past nearly 5 years, women's rights have been compromised. Women's rights have been taken away. Afghan girls have been banned from education from grade 6 and above. And what we are seeing right now is that even in the conversations that have happened since then with the Taliban, by the UN members and others, women's rights have still not made it to the agenda. The last conversations, the last peace talks that happened between the UN members and the Taliban in Doha in 2024, the Taliban put a demand saying that Afghan women cannot be in those rooms. And UN members accepted that. So that just tells you about where the world is in protecting women's rights and this sort of so-called commitment to a feminist foreign policy and caring about gender and looking at things from a gender lens. When it comes to real action, actually we are quite far behind. And it really frustrates me that there is no uproar about what's happening in the country. And a lot of people label it as a cultural and religious issue. If we think about Afghan culture, it's the Afghan women who represent that culture. And who is resisting the Taliban the most? Afghan women. It's their lives and their future that are at risk. And when it comes to religion, there are a dozen of Muslim countries. And in none of those countries you see an actual ban on education. You don't see a ban on women working. Of course, there are challenges everywhere. However, just labeling it into it's a domestic issue, it's a cultural issue, it's a religious issue. We need to challenge that, and we need to treat it as a human rights issue. And we need to center it around the voices of Afghan women and girls and the civil society, the people. And one point that Gaisu already mentioned, which is how sometimes people think that the Taliban are somehow the local indigenous people. The Taliban are actually a byproduct of foreign intervention, of the US intervention, of the Cold War. People need to make a distinction between the two. So when it comes to amplifying local indigenous voices, it's actually the voices of Afghan women. And I hope that women's rights is on the agenda. Women's rights and girls' education is a non-negotiable condition in any conversations with the Taliban, and that Afghan women and girls are in the room. You cannot determine the future of a country when half of the population is held back. And this whole gender apartheid campaign is actually part of this bigger mission, which is to ensure that there is protection for women's rights in international law. We have a lot of law students here. It is worth reflecting on how much protection actually is in international law for women and girls, how much of it is seen from the gender lens. And when you look at it right now, there is no word, there is no mechanism that can protect women against institutionalized oppression, institutionalized segregation. And what the Taliban are doing exactly that. So we are seeing a huge gap in real protection for women and girls, and that's why we have been supporting the gender apartheid campaign, because it helps us frame it for what it is, frame it in a way in which we recognize the scale of it. The threshold is very, very high, and the Taliban are currently meeting the threshold. It is technically a crime for a woman to dare to learn, to step outside her home. The laws are insane. A woman is not allowed to see a male doctor, but then a woman is also not allowed to become a doctor herself. And a lot of these things don't even make sense, but this is the reality that Afghan women are witnessing right now. And I do believe that supporting gender apartheid campaign is important, firstly to seek justice for Afghan women and girls, but also to guarantee protection for women and girls everywhere against systemic, institutionalized form of oppression.
One of the most wrenching scenes in the movie was Zara, I think she was the dentist, having to take her sign down because she had worked so hard to be in that profession, and now it's being taken away from her. So wrenching. My question, thinking about what you said, the glimmer of hope that I saw in the movie was at the very end with the literally underground schools. Is that continuing? Is that increasing? in terms of number of students in those schools? What's going on with that aspect? I mean, it's obviously not the best approach, but that's at least one glimmer of hope.
The way I have been looking at it is that while the Taliban are banning girls from school, what can we do to take education to their homes in this time? So we're trying everything to support the work that is led by Afghan activists, especially Afghan women activists who are in exile. They're running secret underground schools. So that work continues. They are doing lessons on radios. They're doing TV programs. And I hear stories about these girls who are like switching the timing of when they meet up in these underground schools so that it's not suspicious. Like nobody suspects that they're actually learning. And they are also like mentoring other girls in their community. So I had a phone call with 4 Afghan girls who are part of this program, and they were sharing with me how, despite all of the challenges, they're committed to learning. And when they learn something, they go and they pass on that knowledge to other girls in their family, on their street. So they have like become students and teachers at the same time. And one girl said that even reading a book alone in her room is an act of resistance for her. So learning and just picking up a book, it means so much to an Afghan girls. It gives them hope even in these dark times. And they believe that the Taliban will not be in power for this whole time. So they are ready. They're ready to take on the lead. They're looking for more support and solidarity. You can share more about the work that we are doing. Yes.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Which Gaisu is leading. So we have incredible team at Malala Fund.
Yeah. Thank you, Malala. I think the work that we have been doing 2 specific things. One is that we're looking at I don't know if you know Richard Bennett, who is the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights, calls it all tools approach. So we, in our work, we're using all tools approach for justice and accountability for Afghan women and girls. That's what we do through providing a lot of support to our legal experts, Afghan legal experts, who are actually taking the work forward. I think the second one, of course, education is all the grants making are going inside Afghanistan to make sure that the resistance from within home are going to be remained and sustained. Because if we don't do that, God knows 10 years from now how Afghanistan is going to look like to me is very scary. So we want to make sure that these girls still have those spaces and their houses. To refer to your question you asked about what can we do, there are a couple of things I would like to tell you. One, if you're a student, you can go to Afghanistan's Justice Archive. If you're a law student, when you're going to that website, it's called justicearchive.org.
We'll put it on our website.
We'll put it on the website. Yeah. What it does is that it actually documented every single decree that the Taliban put it out for women and girls and how they execute it. So it's not only that they put the decrees out there, they actually build a system, and they also have the police to implement that, although they don't have a judicial system inside Afghanistan. That's one. And the second one is that...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Clarify, what can we do? I mean, what the website has the atrocities, it sounds like, of the Taliban. What can we can look at it? I guess that's the point. We could be observers and aware. Is that the...
Right. I think one of the things we don't have it is that we don't have the scholarship that is built for understanding gender apartheid and how that systematic approach look like. Through your research, you're actually understanding how the system works, and then you actually build this scholarship. I think that's necessary because the fight to codify gender apartheid is going to take 4 years. It's going to be until 2029. Yep. The term itself needs to be recognized. If we don't have academic support to name it gender apartheid through your research and writing, we may not be able to push the policymakers to actually recognize the term as a gender apartheid. The second one I think is very important to look at is the People Tribunal. We did have the People Tribunal last December in Spain that brought a lot of, and the doctor, the dentist, was also part of one of the participants who actually testified in front of the international judges to tell her story and how she experienced imprisonment inside Afghanistan. So the judgment of that tribunal is such an advocacy tool that can be used. And I think if you just go to their website, look at their work, I think you just need to, 1, learn about it, 2, raise awareness, and also make sure that whatever you do in your communities, you need to make sure that you center the voices of Afghan women and girls. I think that's the least you can do so that you recognize their agency as Afghan women who are actually taking this fight forward.
I will broaden the lens a little bit to talk about the Malala Fund and some of the other things you're doing. And I want to invite questions. If people have questions, I'm going to be reading them off of my iPad. This one is a very broad question, but I thought it's worthwhile to pose to you and see if you're willing to answer it. I'll just read it. To women like me who grew up looking up to you and your courage to fight back, what message do you have, especially in light of what's happening in the world today and how helpless it makes us feel?
I mean, I started my activism at a very young age, and the Taliban took control of my valley in the north of Pakistan, and I was just 11 years old when they announced a ban on girls' education. So I can fully relate to this feeling when you feel like you can't do anything. How can you have a better future? How do you change perspectives? How do you address this extremism? How do you address the issue of violence against women and girls? But this is a reality that I grew up in, and I, since then, have been constantly thinking about what can I do. I believe in the power of one voice starting a change, but I believe even more in the power of collective work and activism. And we can really shift a narrative when we join hands. So I really appreciate the support of everybody, from storytellers to activists to legal experts, who are reflecting constantly on ensuring that we are addressing the needs and the challenges of the day, but we're also thinking about how do we, like globally, through international law, through all of these mechanisms, are putting more protection for women and girls. Because like what's happening right now in the world when we are hearing about, the child marriage issue coming back again, or like female genital mutilation, to, what's happening in Afghanistan, women and girls living under a gender apartheid and a ban on education and right to work, to like even in Western countries we're hearing about reversals. It's just a wake-up call to reflect on how little protection there actually is for women and girls. So I'm like, let's challenge ourselves. Let's challenge ourselves in where we are and how we don't lose sight of protecting human rights.
Well put.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll ask a positive question for a change. The Malala Fund has been in operation for more than a decade now.
Yes.
What have been some of your biggest learnings along the way? What are some of your proudest accomplishments for the fund?
I'm just so proud of the work that local education activists are doing, and that is the whole model of Malala Fund. We give grants to local education organizations. That includes activists in Pakistan, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Brazil, and of course, Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, it is a very difficult situation because a lot of these activists are in exile. Some of them are doing the work through storytelling. They're producing documentaries too. They're also providing secret education as well through underground schools. And they're also leading the gender apartheid campaign. So, but when I reflect on the work, yes, I am proud of a lot of moments of success. Like we have changed laws in so many places. We have increased the budget for education in so many countries. Like in Pakistan, we have improved the quality of teaching, which helps girls stay in schools and reduces the dropout rate. In Tanzania, for instance, the activists have changed the law around the re-entry of girls who become pregnant and become mothers at a young age. It was one of the few countries where if a girl became pregnant and a mother at a young age, she was prohibited from returning to school. So that law has been reversed because of the work of these local activists. I believe in policy change and implementation. That's like the long-term vision. And I also believe in addressing the urgent needs of children. So we are there for children who are affected by conflicts, by genocides, by the oppression that's happening around the world. We are working in Gaza. We are supporting education in Sudan and other places as well, because we can't look away from the hundreds and thousands of children whose education right now is directly affected by the global mess that our leaders are causing.
This is potentially to Gaisu. What are the Afghan men doing for women's rights? It's obviously not a monolithic group of people. Is there support among men, certain men in Afghanistan?
let me start by my story. I'm living with my partner who just came from Afghanistan with me right after the collapse. Every day he looks at me, he says, "You're fighting with me, you're fighting the fight you're supposed to do with all Afghan men, one. The second one, you're fighting with me because of all these men in the world. So I'm responsible for all of these things that women experience in the world." But I think the essence of that question is a little bit difficult for me to respond, because we did have, and we still do have, women activists who stand on our side for a very long time. But I think this system is so extreme that it's very difficult for Afghan men to be very vocal and show what they do and how they support. And I'm going to give you an example. For instance, in the law and their criminal code, it's not only women who are punished for the crime that they commit, but also their brothers, fathers, and husbands are going to have a huge punishment if they will not control their women and the houses, right? I think there are certain resistance within Afghanistan. Most of them are hidden, but we do have storytellers. We do have artists that are coming together, and they're doing through art and creative ways to mobilize and come and be on our side, but perhaps you don't see them on the street to protest, because if they arrested Afghan women in the prison and they experienced rape, but a lot of Afghan men for 5 years got killed in those prisons and in Afghanistan. There is no judicial system. Therefore, I think the system is so oppressive that it's very challenging for men to actually have the courage to come forward. But we are supporting, by the way, a lot of artists who are men. We have musicians, we have storytellers that are coming out and basically showing solidarity. That's at least what they can do. But something else I would like to tell you is that the collapse of Afghanistan was extremely difficult for, I don't want to generalize, for at least my male friends compared to women. I think the reason for me could be because we Afghan women have lived war. They lived war too, but maybe we as women have learned how to just get up again and work and just survive. Because the mental health is a huge issue for a lot of Afghan men right now, especially those in exile, but it's extremely challenging for them. That's a taboo in Afghanistan perhaps, but for Afghan women, that's a bit easier to come forward and mobilize and get together and tell stories and help each other. But I do see layers of challenges for them, not perhaps giving excuses that they're not, coming forward and fight for us, but perhaps I think there are layers of other challenges that they're going through, and the oppressive regime is not allowing them to be very vocal, and they have not been seen, perhaps, today at least.
This is an interesting question. You're obviously doing incredible work on education, educating girls and women. Is there any thought about political change in Afghanistan and being involved in political change? And there was a striking line in the movie where they were chanting, "The next president will be a woman of Afghanistan." Is that part of your agenda as well, as political change, either in Afghanistan or in other parts of the world which are repressing women?
I think we need more global pressure to ensure that we do not normalize relationships with the Taliban. There is more pressure on all countries to not just treat women's rights issue as a domestic issue and look away from it. So I do think that global momentum is really important. And for the Taliban to know that there would be no compromise on women's rights. And I have been asked this question many times, like, how do we think about addressing, the very problem of the existence of ideologies like that of the Taliban. And that is something that I have sort of lived my whole life. Like, how do we address this problem? I have been, I'm just like one of the many who have been targeted by the Taliban. They have been a very violent extremist group. They have bombed schools. They have targeted activists. They shot me when I was at age 15. I was very lucky that I survived that attempt. But for me, the best way to actually resist and fight the Taliban back is to make women more visible, to help women get an education, to help women have their rights and dignity. So when I think about Afghanistan, I know that we cannot just some people just think about military intervention and these things. I don't think it's ever a conversation about that. So I immediately think about protection in the international law. That's a big gap right now, and the gender apartheid campaign is very significant for that, because we need to really question, is there a mechanism in the law in place that can push countries, that can help us hold them accountable, that can help us hold the Taliban accountable? And then the second part is, how do we resist the Taliban? What the Taliban don't want to see is women thriving. What the Taliban don't want to see is Afghan women playing sports, learning, singing, expressing themselves through art. And I am doing the very opposite of all of that. We are supporting Afghan women's secret schools. We are supporting Afghan women who are in exile, who are speaking out. We are supporting the Afghan women's soccer team and cricket team in exile be able to play. We're helping Afghan women express themselves through art. We were at Atelier Jolie, this salon that started by Angelina Jolie, and there was an amazing Afghan young singer. She was playing a violin and she was singing, and to me that felt like a moment of resistance. This is what the Taliban don't want to see. So your support and solidarity for Afghan women and girls in every shape or form is way more powerful than you can imagine. To also the Afghan girls who are in this room, who are learning right now, that is resistance. And that is something that keeps me going, that gives me hope, is that we will ensure that things change for Afghan women and girls, and we'll ensure that that there's more protection for women and girls in our law.
Go ahead, Gaisu, you want to add?
Just point out, the Taliban killed my father. It's 25 years, who never came back, and he's gone, right? I think to me, what the Taliban have been doing in the past 5 years are creating that system to maintain their power. The only way they can do is that they need to oppress women. That by itself, if you're creating that system, to me, that system is political. Can we overthrow a regime in Afghanistan? I'm not the best person to respond to that question, right? And am I a political leader right now to advocate for political change? I'm not the right person to respond to that question. But what I understand is that the system and the symptom that is inside Afghanistan in the past 5 years are political. In order for the Taliban to remain longer, one way to do that is to oppress women, and they use that as a leverage against the international community. So the international community need to understand that they're using it, one, to maintain their own power, second, to actually use it against the international community and say that women's rights in Afghanistan was a Western value, right? Those, I think, are the two things that I would like to respond when it comes to political questions, but perhaps I'm not the right person to respond to questions around, regime change and how it's going to look like.
But also, what the Taliban are doing is not just affecting women in Afghanistan. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You might have heard about this when the Taliban, representative, foreign minister, whatever, visited India. Yeah. They also requested the Indian ministries to exclude women from a press conference. So Indian women journalists were excluded. And that should be a wake-up call, that they're not just making Afghan women invisible, but they actually cannot see women in the room anywhere. And you would hear these stories. I have talked to a lot of people who have been to Afghanistan. They're UN officials, and the stories are if it's even a Muslim woman with a hijab, she's also from another Muslim country, and she also follows the same Muslim values, and the Taliban refuse to even look up to her in her eyes. That's how much they are, not able to tolerate women in a room. And for me, it's not about the individuals. It's not about for me, it's about an ideology. And the more we sort of look away from it, we normalize it. We make it feel okay. So I have always sort of been I've always spoken about challenging those ideologies. Education is very powerful when it's the right education, when it's quality education, when it's encouraging critical thinking, when it helps people see the world, in this beautiful, diverse place as it is, when it opens a conversation, when it's more, helping us question things, we can really challenge the Taliban mindsets. When the people who are educated, who learn, who actually know about the message of Islam, they are the ones who are actually challenging the Taliban ideologies. There's nothing Islamic about it. You would not find a single verse in the Quran that says a woman cannot learn or a woman cannot go to work. It's their patriarchy, it's their misogyny, and I hope that more and more people challenge them. I also hope that more Muslim countries would challenge them as well. There is this organization called the Muslim World League, and they hosted a conference in Islamabad inviting religious leaders in all Muslim countries, and I spoke there and I challenged Muslim countries, and then they issued this declaration that said that banning girls from an education is actually un-Islamic. So we need that call to be amplified to say that what the Taliban are doing is actually un-Islamic, it's against the culture, it's against human rights, and it is unacceptable.
We have a few more minutes, and I want to be respectful for your time, but can I ask a question? And this is meant to be, not to be a history class, but you mentioned, I think, that the Taliban today is a byproduct of U.S. intervention. Is it simply to say that the U.S. withdrawal created a vacuum for the Taliban to come in, or does it go back further than that?
Unfortunately, it goes back further than that. The Taliban emerged from the Mujahideen, which the US formed and supported, and there were other countries involved as well, and every country is involved for their own geopolitical interests. I'm sure we have amazing students here. I'm sure we all have studied this, so these are not topics of the past. These are the things that are happening people even now. Whatever policy it was 3 decades ago or 4 decades ago, and it's still was related to the Cold War, and we are still facing the consequences of it, whether it's in parts of Pakistan or in Afghanistan, and it should really make us question the international. It should really make us question foreign policies and what's really happening in the world. These things can be causing sufferings for decades, a whole generation. The Afghan women activists who we talk to, they have stories that they have heard from their moms, where their mothers, back in the late 1990s, were telling about their experience, how they lost their education, their rights, and now there's a whole different generation who are not able to see their classroom, who don't have their rights anymore. So it goes, unfortunately, way back than just what happened in this situation itself, in these this second takeover of the Taliban. And again, it's, we should really reflect on how these peace talks happen and how women and girls are excluded from those rooms and their agenda is not on the table. We need to reverse that. They have to be in the room. It should be, women's rights should be a non-negotiable condition.
One last question to ask you, and we'll let you go. End on a lighter note. You have a sports fund.
Yes.
Can you talk about that fund and how it's essentially the same things that you're doing with the Malala Fund, you're pursuing in an investment capacity as well? Talk about the sports fund to finish up.
Yeah, I'm using every opportunity that I have to create a better place for women and girls, and it's my lifelong mission to create a world where every girl can learn, play, and choose her own future. So through Malala Fund, we do work for girls' education. What is unique about Malala Fund is that it is specifically focused on girls' secondary education. That's where we see a huge gap in funding for girls' education. And that's where we see most of the gender-related challenges start affecting girls, from child marriage to social norms. And so, we have become an expert in that field. And then our model is grant making. So we are really strengthening the activist community. We have supported more than 400 organizations. And I'm passionate about girls' education, but I am not an expert on every issue that's to do with girls' education. This is the work of activists coming together. So my goal is always about, my approach is always to support other activists who are doing the work, just as my father and I were doing it in Pakistan. Then I started a production company as well, and I have been, amplifying the stories of women, just like in Bread and Roses. There's another documentary called Champions of the Golden Valley, and it's about skiing in Afghanistan. Olympics has acquired it, so everyone can watch it on Olympics.com. It's called Champions of the Golden Valley, and it just shows you how a sport like skiing is giving hope for peace to a community. And my husband and I, he comes from the sports world, have now launched a sports fund as well, and we are really excited to bring more capital into women's sports. As you know, that women are, accelerating into this sports space, and women's sports is so entertaining. Like, I find it even more entertaining than men's sports, but that's just my opinion. I have been to women's rugby games and soccer games, and they're just incredible. It's a powerful tool to change the narrative, to really change perspectives on how women and girls are seen, and sports helps build self-esteem and confidence in girls. So when I look at the benefits and the business case of it, I'm like, we need more investors. We need more people to come and support women's sports. And as I mentioned, we have been supporting the Afghan women's soccer team and cricket team in exile as well. So yeah, that's like a bit of the sports work. And I'm personally also passionate about sports. So if like 4 years ago you had asked me about my favorite activity, I would have said sitting. But now it's running and trying new sport like pickleball and paddle tennis and skiing recently and golf and all of these things.
Well, we'll close with the reference to this book, which does describe your husband in great detail. It's a terrific read. It's a wonderful read about your own life and Oxford and Asser and everything else. So I recommend this book. It's wonderful to read. And
just to add one thing, so in this book I have shared a lot about my journey as a student, as an activist, and how I was reliving my childhood in my 20s when I was at college. And and for me, like, this is the most like personal reflections I have shared. But one thing which I also talk about is the moment when the Taliban take control of Afghanistan. That was in August 2021. And that very week, I was actually in Boston. I was at a hospital here receiving my last surgery to recover from the Taliban bullet. That one Taliban bullet took me more than 8 or 9 surgeries. And in that moment when I was like witnessing the Taliban taking control of the whole country, and I was talking to Afghan women activists and their worries, their concerns about what was going to happen to all that they had done for 2 decades to have a better future, it just like, made me reflect on the fact that if it took me so long to recover from one Taliban bullet, I just cannot imagine what Afghan women have witnessed and how dark things are going to be for them in the years ahead. The concern, the tears, the panic was correct. We have seen who the Taliban are. There is no Taliban 2.0. There is no good and bad Taliban. They are who they are. And no one can show us that better than the Taliban themselves. Everything is on record. The grievances and the crime against humanity that they are committing right now, everything is on record. And I hope that we challenge them. I hope that we codify gender apartheid. We call it a gender apartheid in Afghanistan. And there's like no compromise on women's rights. We protect the right to education for them. We keep supporting Afghan women activists. We keep supporting the secret schools and everything that they're doing. And we come together stronger than ever to keep this fight going. So Boston has a very special place in my heart, also because of the negotiation course that I have done. Most importantly, but also because I have received many surgeries here as well. So Boston has been a part of my life. So I want to thank you all for your support, for listening to us, and I hope you will amplify this voice.
Well, Malala and Gaisu, let me say, closing things out, that on behalf of everyone here, I can tell you we are so grateful for what you're doing for the world.
Thank you.
And thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you. Thank you.